You are listening to Stories from the Heart, inspiring tales of life, love, and learning, presented by the Camarillo Healthcare District. In this episode, Pattie Braga of Ventura shares a story about developing a closer relationship with her father after his health takes a turn and she finds herself in the role as his caregiver.
None of what I was hearing on the other end of the phone was making sense. It was 2001, and I was sitting in a hotel room in Sacramento. I had flown up there just 2 days earlier to check out a food and wine festival that was happening. These events were still a new thing back in 2001, and I was working for a company that was interested in possibly hosting one in Ventura County. I was gathering intel, talking to the organizers, checking out the vendors, watching how they manage security and all the logistics that go into one of these events. I was taking a quick break for lunch when my boss called me, stating that I needed to call Jim, my dad's neighbor. Well, this is odd, I thought to myself. I was a little worried, but more confused than anything else. The phone call I made to Jim didn't clarify anything. He said, "Your dad's not well." Apparently, he was talking crazy. Neighbors had seen him late at night pacing around the neighborhood, seemingly talking to himself. He had yelled obscenities to another neighbor, which was a little shocking coming from my dad. I mean, he was not a man to use foul language. None of this sounded like him. I didn't know what was going on, unlike the quiet, respectful, level-headed man that I knew. After that call, I knew I needed to head back to Ventura. I quickly called my boss and let him know I was coming home early. I called my sister, more for moral support and to catch her up on what was happening. She lived in Temecula and was juggling 2 kids, aged 3 and 5. She couldn't help but. She promised to come if it was truly an emergency. After hopping an early flight back, I went straight to my dad's house. He was there in his room, pacing around, kind of muttering to himself. I was only 31, and really not fully prepared to manage someone who was having a mental breakdown, especially a parent. I had no idea what to do in this situation. I was able to persuade him to come with me to Ventura County Medical Center's Behavioral Health Department. I checked him in and stood hopelessly as they walked him back to where he was admitted and evaluated. They began testing him. Were his pupils dilated? Was it drugs? Did he have a history of this behavior before? Finally, they gave him an MRI. Good news. Well, he wasn't crazy. Bad news. He had visible gray matter damage to his brain, probably due to a stroke. The doctor stated that she thought the stroke was what was causing all of these behavioral issues. Would I get my dad back, or is he stuck this way? I asked. We don't know, she said. My dad fully recovered, thankfully. His stroke was technically considered minor, and after some time, he was back on his feet, mentally and physically. A few years later, soon after my daughter's 10th birthday, my dad had a more severe stroke. He lost his balance, fell, and was taken to the hospital. This time, the stroke didn't impact him mentally, but physically. His fine motor skills were very limited, so he couldn't hold a fork or a book. He was incredibly weak and needed assistance transitioning to and from his wheelchair. It was almost like his muscles forgot how to work. For a 63-year-old man and his 33-year-old daughter, these limitations were overwhelming. My once independent father was gone, replaced by someone that needed assistance with almost everything. Eating became a chore, as does using the bathroom or making a phone call. Everyone always said I was independent and strong-headed like my dad. I never understood what that meant until I became his caregiver. In quick succession, I found him a nursing home that was close to my house. I met with the manager and felt confident my dad would get good care there. He fought me bitterly on leaving his home for the assisted facility, even though I think he knew it needed to be done. My sister and I went through his place and started eliminating things that he couldn't take with him to the nursing home, which was pretty much everything but clothes and a few personal items. Although it was tough, we tried to include him in this process and give him an opportunity to say goodbye to some of the things he cherished. We donated his bowling ball, but decided that the hundreds of records that he had of the big bands and the show tunes and the classical music, all of which he loved, would stay with me over at my house. We got him settled and we got him into a schedule. Every Saturday at 12 p.m., I'd pick him up for lunch. He never wanted anything fancy. Panera or Taco Bell were his top choices. If it was a special occasion, we'd go to Andrea's Seafood Market in the Ventura Harbor. Fish and chips were his treat. I'd also come by on either a Tuesday or Wednesday during the week. We'd watch Jeopardy together, but then turn the channel when Wheel of Fortune came on. My dad had very strong opinions about Pat Sajak. He did not like that guy. To this day, I don't know why. With all the time he spent in front of the TV, my dad became one of the most informed people I knew. A documentary on the Grand Canyon, a Nova special on the Titanic or ice mummies. My dad got a crush on Olivia Benson, too. We could never turn the channel when Law and Order Special Victims Unit was on. His girlfriend, the amazing actress Mariska Hargitay. This went on for years, this schedule of ours. Occasionally, I'd take him to one of my daughter's softball games. I remember we went to the Hollywood Bowl to see John Williams perform on one of our Saturdays. But most of the time, with him it was just talking, just visiting, catching up and listening to his stories, listening to the gossip around the nursing home of who was a new resident and who was moving rooms and why, and who won at bingo. Then, in early 2020, the pandemic hit. Nursing homes were the first to close to visitors. I was able to get in one last time before the official lockdown to talk to Dad about what was happening. I promised I'd be back to visit him on our Saturdays and for Jeopardy as soon as they allowed visitors again. I really didn't think it was going to be longer than a few weeks, so no need to worry. I wrote my phone number down in big, legible numbers so that he could call me if he had access to a phone. I stocked him up on Hershey chocolate bars and hot Fritos, his favorite treats, and I said goodbye. I tried to call him over the next few weeks to check on him, but it was tough getting information. The nursing home was overwhelmed, dealing with death and sickness, managing employees, and constantly changing information on this virus that we were all still learning about. About 2 months after the pandemic started, they called me about 4 p.m. and stated I should come for a visit. Apparently, Dad wasn't doing well. I masked and gloved, had my temperature taken, and walked down the hallway that I had walked 100 times before to his room. Dad was unresponsive. I sat with him, held his hand, until he died a few hours later. Now, 3 years later, as I think back at this time, I'm not upset. I'm not angry. I'm sad sometimes. I miss my dad. But I'm also so grateful. I got the most incredible gift, time with my dad. All those Saturdays and all those Jeopardy games on TV. I learned more about him as a person than I ever would have if it weren't for our time together. Watching him manage his physical limitations taught me about patience, acceptance, and dignity. Dad taught me not to give up, that stubbornness can be a good thing, that you should forgive and give grace. He even taught me some very bad jokes. I still love sharing them to this day. My poor daughter rolls her eyes at me, just like I did with Dad.
Thank you for listening to Stories from the Heart, inspiring tales of life, love, and learning, presented by the Camarillo Healthcare District. If you would like to share your story, please visit camhealth.com and fill out our form under Share Your Story. You'll work with a storytelling coach to fine-tune your story for broadcast. We are looking for people to share health or caregiver journeys, to talk about personal experience, moments in time, and lessons learned while navigating life. These life stories will paint a visual picture with words. They should be 5 to 10 minutes long and must be primarily about the storyteller and their truths, experiences, and emotions.